What is going on, guys? The Inside Blue Podcast, and today we're talking about the New York Giants. And of course, their season is over, 2-9. Everything has gone downhill. The Giants are at rock bottom, and for the Giants to be at rock bottom, unfortunately, people have to be fired. And I hate saying that because the Giants have just been going in this endless cycle of coach after coach and GM. Dave Gettleman gone. Now Joe Schoen is going to be gone. Brian Daboll is going to be gone. And everything is just going completely wrong after the 2022 season where the Giants did look like they had some hope. The Giants made the playoffs, and you thought like, okay, maybe this is finally the squad. Maybe this is finally the GM and the coach that we're going to take to the promised land. And we're going to start making the playoffs and being better and doing all of that. Nope. The Giants blow, and they're one of the worst roster teams. They're one of the worst teams in general in all aspects. Nothing has gone forward after the 2022 season. They've gone backwards, and they've gone backwards to a point where people have to be fired. And for me, it stinks talking about people having to be fired because it's just this endless cycle, just endless coach after coach after coach, and nothing gets done. And, of course, the big blame is all the way up top with John Mara, and then it goes to Joe Schoen, and then it goes to Brian Daboll and this full coaching staff. Now, I think if there's one thing to know is that Brian Daboll has not been good this year. Press conferences continue to get worse. The players have given up on him. They're 2-9. They haven't led in a game since October 6th. October 6th against the Seattle Seahawks was the final time that this football team led in a football game. And if there is something that pisses me off more, it's just that this team is just done. Like, they are so done. And I look at everything on the table. Nothing's getting better. The draft classes have been awful under Joe Schoen. And let's get into Joe Schoen first before we get into Brian Daboll. And let's really kick on this video because I'm pissed off. I am very pissed off with how this organization is ran. Joe Schoen has been terrible. The free agents. Xavier McKinney, gone. Julian Love, gone. Saquon Barkley, gone. And it pains me, especially with Saquon, that every time I see this guy on prime time, he's running over guys, moving everywhere, moving people, trucking people. Is about to set a pace for this NFL rushing yard. I honestly think there's a real chance you can make an argument that he's the NFL MVP. He's not only going to win offensive MVP, he's going to win the NFL MVP. I understand Lamar Jackson has been having a great season, but Saquon Barkley has elevated this Eagles offense into something very, very dangerous. Let's get into the draft class of Joe Schoen, which is by far his worst attribute as a GM. Kayvon Thibodeau, pick number 5. What has he brought? What are the expectations going forward with Kayvon Thibodeau for the rest of the season? Because I'll tell you one thing. He has not lived up to number 5 overall draft selection expectations. He has not been that good. Evan Neal's a trash can. He should be gone after this year. Wan'Dale Robinson's no better than a wide receiver 3. At best. He plays in the slot. You'd think he'd rack up receiving yards. He can't catch a football. And the Giants passed up on numerous other wide receivers in this class, including George Pickens. Joshua Zito can't block for shit. Cordell Flott gets substituted for Adoree Jackson on third down. And Daniel Bellinger is behind Chris Marzak, or however you say his last name. He's our third tight end. Dan Belton is shit. Mikey McFadden's okay. He's good enough that I could say he's a good player in this class. DJ Davidson's terrible. Beavers is off the squad. And now let's get into the 2023 class, which might be worse. And think about it. This is a drafting football league. If you don't draft well, you'll never be good. And if you don't get the guys that need to be in, because the Giants have been in the top 10, top 12, numerous years now. So you'd think they'd be a team that takes a step forward. They've only taken steps back. This 2024 squad is not good. Not at all. Offensively, they're not good. Defensively, they're not good. So they trade up for Deonte Banks. Deonte Banks is a bust. Tell you that right now. Hasn't gotten a hand on a ball. No interceptions. No nothing. JMS doesn't look like a great center for the future. He got bullied against Vita Vea, which you can make an argument. You can kind of accept it because it's Vita Vea. But regardless, you're a center. If you collapse, the entire offensive line collapse. Jalen Hyatt, you trade up for him. So you trade up for Deonte Banks and Jalen Hyatt, and both of them are awful. Jalen Hyatt has one route, and it's a go route, or a streak route, or a fade route. You can't be successful in the NFL. And I'll say this. Maybe it's because of the quarterback. Maybe it's because he doesn't have a gunslinger like he did at Tennessee that can get him the ball in those deep routes and he can beat corners downfield. Maybe it's that. Eric Gray's shit. Every time this guy touches the football, I think he's going to fumble, especially on kick returns, where we saw against the Cleveland Browns, and we saw it in other aspects. Trey Hawkins is terrible. Jordan Riley is terrible. Javarius Owens isn't even on the team. 2024 class, where I'd actually think it's getting a little overrated. Malik Neighbors is a stud. We know that. The off-the-field things are not good. With the stuff he says about Brian Daboll, the stuff he says about the team, it's not good. I understand he's frustrated. He's on a 2-9 football team. He's seeing his buddy Jaden Daniels have an over 500 record. He's seeing other players that he knows has fun. Tyler Nubin's okay. I've been hyped on him. I've said he's been good in the past. But when you go from Xavier McKinney to Tyler Nubin, it's a big change. Xavier McKinney has 7 times the interceptions as the New York Football Giants. And the only person to have an interception was Darius Musow at a UCLA linebacker from a deflection off of Dexter Lawrence's hand, intercepted Sam Darnold in week 1. Drew Phillips has been getting torched lately. He has not been great. First 8 weeks, of course, he was great. Now he's starting to get torched. Theo Johnson's all right. Drop issues, highest drop rate in the NFL. Needs improvement heavily. Tyron Tracy's 25 years of age. If you can't succeed at the NFL at 25, you will never. And listen, they definitely hit on the pick. But regardless, he's 25. I hope he can hit a hole. I hope he can catch the football. And then Darius Musow, bad player, has the only interception on the team. But that's what it takes. You don't hit on 2 draft classes and maybe a third. Malik Neighbors is great. Tyron Tracy's great. But other than that, I don't see much great in this draft. I don't. You could maybe make the argument that it's an overrated draft class from Joe Schoen. So it's 3 free agencies he's missed. 3 draft classes he's missed. But who's the bigger problem? I think it's clearly Joe Schoen. The draft class has been terrible. The guys he brings in, terrible. We have no backups for offensive line. Jermaine Illuminor gets hurt in the first quarter. Who the hell is going to be our right tackle now? Who the hell is going to be our swing tackle? Our left tackle? Give me a guy off waivers? That's a fucking joke if I've ever seen one. So, we already mentioned that he let Saquon go. He let Xavier McKinney go, and he let Julian Love. All those guys were great captains. The Giants don't have captains. The Saquon issue, we know from a business standpoint, it wasn't right to re-sign Saquon for the future. But if you see how things were handled, it looks awful. They pay the $40 million man, Daniel Jones, but then you don't re-sign Saquon. You let McKinney go. You get Julian Love go. Two great players. That could be your safety and your strong safety right now. And the secondary wouldn't be as bad. And they probably would be able to create turnovers. The Giants can't create turnovers. I think they're about to break the record of no turnovers from the defense in multiple weeks. We've already said drafting's terrible. Joe Schoen's not a winner. Joe Schoen is a loser. And I don't want him drafting our next QB and using up this money for the positions of need. They'll have $65 million. I don't want that going into Joe Schoen's hands because he's just going to make moves to try and save his job again. And I've been saying it. Daboll and Joe Schoen are a package. If Joe Schoen goes, Daboll goes. And this is a Joe Schoen issue more than Brian Daboll. Granted, we'll get into Brian Daboll in a few moments. But with Joe Schoen, how do you keep him? How do you keep him with what he has done? The Daniel Jones incident that will go on in Giants fans' nightmares for years. The letting McKinney walk. Paying Drew Lock $5 million to sit on the bench. You could have used him and Singletary's money to re-sign Saquon. And you could have had Malik Neighbors, Saquon, a young QB coming in with some studs at offense, an improved offensive line, having Brian Daboll call plays or just having him be in the head coach. That's already better than what you have currently. Get Shane Bowen out of here. Whatever they evaluated was terrible. Supposedly we were supposed to be a better run defense. We're not. We don't have defensive tackles. We don't have a good enough defensive line other than Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. Elijah Chapman isn't great. That's why they need a draft defensive tackle in the NFL draft this upcoming. Whether it's Joe Schoen or it's a completely new GM. But, Joe Schoen failed the New York Giants. He failed at his job. I want him gone. I've been saying it numerous times. This is a Joe Schoen problem team more than it is Brian Daboll. But let's get into Brian Daboll, because I know everyone's going to say, Vin, you're defending Brian Daboll. Where's the Brian Daboll hate? Where's this? Where's that? I'll get this first. If I am keeping someone, it's Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll doesn't let McKinney walk, Saquon walk, Love walk, pay Daniel Jones $40 million. This isn't Daboll's quarterback. I know a lot of Giants fans want to see what Daboll is with a young, upcoming, maybe a Cam Ward type quarterback. He's on a terrible roster. up and down. The wide receiver core is weak. The offensive line is weak. I don't see any coach that just comes in here and fixes his offense like that. They need more pieces. The roster is not good enough, and that's part of on Joe Schoen for not bringing in players for Brian Daboll. What is Brian Daboll going to do with Daniel Jones? Like I said, the Giants have not led in the game since October 6th. That was against Seattle. Unfortunately, Brian Daboll is probably gone. He's the sacrificial lamb. Joe Schoen lost him a job. Joe Schoen is going to lose his job. And probably going to lose Shane Bowen his job too. And they're going to completely, over these next few weeks, going into Thanksgiving against Dallas, going into all the other weeks, because there's still a lot of football to be played. They still got to take on Baltimore. They're still going to take on the Eagles at Lincoln Financial. Still going to take on the Colts, the Saints. What team are they beating? They're going to go 2-15, I'll tell you that right now. And that probably should lock them up the number one pick in the draft. And like I said, like I will say, if a coach goes 2-15, it's hard to bring him back. It is. From a business standpoint, if things are not going right, you got to get the stench out of the room. This stench has been overwhelming. Nothing's going right for this football team. Nothing's going to go right for this football team. Dexter Lawrence calling the team soft. That's your captain. Like I said, this team doesn't have captains. Brian Burns said this team's immature. I'd say that's a better word than calling 30-plus guys soft. It's a young team. It is a young team. They're a very young roster. But the fact of the matter is if you're not competitive, you could be the youngest team, but you could be bad. You could be a bad young team. I've seen it over a course of numerous sports, not just football. So where do the Giants go from here? They got to clear house. It's the unfortunate answer. And I think just for how this season has gone, the search for a new quarterback, the search for a new offensive coordinator, the search for a new defensive coordinator, head coach, drafting personnel, whoever was in that room and said that Daniel Jones is worth $40 million, they should be fired on the spot. You don't give a quarterback 15. You don't give a quarterback who's thrown 15 touchdowns $40 million. And if negotiations are that hard to re-sign him, don't re-sign him. Let him walk. Go to a veteran presence and rebuild from there. Daniel Jones is now searching for a playoff contending team. Whether that's the Baltimore Ravens, Vikings have been in the mix. Teams like that. Did the Giants fail Daniel Jones? Yeah, I'd say so. But Daniel Jones also failed us. Daniel Jones was terrible. He was terrible coming out of the class. Granted, it's not Joe Schoen's quarterback. It's not Brian Daboll's quarterback. I understand that all. Just fire. Clear house. It's a dumpster fire in MetLife. Wouldn't be shocked if I get a notification that limited fans show up to the Giants games because they don't want to see this. Daboll knows that. Joe Schoen knows that. It's always been a more of a Joe Schoen issue with what he's had to bring in. It sucks. But anyways, guys, we know the issue. There's not much more to talk about. The Giants, People need to be fired. And that's me signing off. Until next time, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends about this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.